Hello and welcome. You're listening to Marketing Matters on the Wharton Podcast Network. This is our weekly podcast where we analyze the latest in advertising, marketing, customer behavior, new product launches, retailing, branding. I'm Barbara Kahn, the Patty and J.H. Baker Professor of Marketing, and I'm joined by my co-host, Americus Reed, the Whitney M. Young Jr. Professor of Marketing and the Brand Identity Theorist. Hello, Americus.
Hi, Barbara. So, they call you the wizard of the Wharton marketing department. And the reason why they call you this is that you wave your wisdom wand and magical things happen because we just get smarter about very specific topics. So I was thinking about this and I was imagining the last two thought scenarios that we've been sort of discussing, which is what if you're the CMO of Cracker Barrel and things are going haywire online and you got to be able to communicate. You got to be able to come up with a strategy to be able to understand the right ways to persuade people of your particular position. Or let's say you are C-suite leadership at Disney and you're sort of trying to struggle to figure out, should we bring Kimmel back? Should we not bring him back? What's going on in this ecosystem? You need a strategy, Barbara. So I'm coming to you today to see if we can somehow find some insight around communication, comms, how to say the right things, what to say, when, how. What have you got for me today, Wizard?
How about the author of a book called Think Faster, Talk Smarter? Wouldn't that be a good solution to that problem, Americus?
Amazing.
So we're so lucky today to have with us the author of that book, Think Faster, Talk Smarter, and the host of a podcast with the same name, Think Fast, Talk Smart, Matt Abrahams. Thank you, Matt, so much for being here.
Hi, Matt.
I am thrilled to be with you, Americus and Barbara. I wish you guys had more energy. Would you please dial it up a little bit?
Yes, we're full of caffeine, sir. That
All right, I love it.
That might be one of your protocols. I don't know. We'll see.
We are so happy to talk to you. Not only are you a podcast host and author, but you also teach at Stanford Graduate School of Business, so you're one of us. So we're really happy to have you with us. Can you tell us a little bit about your background, how you managed to accumulate all these accolades?
Well, thank you. And there's nothing more wonderful than being faculty at a business school. You know that the students are amazingly bright, the opportunities are fantastic, and I love learning. So it's an opportunity to learn, to teach. My background is I've always been passionate about communication. My mother was a teacher, an elementary school teacher. My father was a lawyer. So words and communication were always really important. My father was always, how do we structure this, make this clear and concise? And my mother was, how do we make this engaging and interesting? And so from a very young age, I was always fascinated by communication. With the last name Abrahams, I always went first in school.
Oh.
So my latest work has been on what I call spontaneous speaking. How do you communicate in the moment when you're put on the spot? And my whole life has been that way because I always knew where I sat. I always knew I was going to go first. So I was always put on the spot. So I think that interest early in my life and the experience I had growing up really had me focus on communication. I was fortunate enough to study it in grad school. And then I worked in the corporate world for over a decade. I ran learning and development for companies and clearly saw how critical communication is to success, not just for organizations, but for individuals within those organizations. So I've been teaching strategic communication now at Stanford's Graduate School of Business this is my 16th year. We just started recently.
Wow.
And I love helping students understand how they can hone and develop their communication
I
skills.
have a couple reactions to what you just said. One of them,
Yeah.
it reminded me of Malcolm Gladwell's book. I forget which book it was, where he talked about whether you were born in the beginning of the year or the end of the year, you're going to have some advantage in school. Or That's a really interesting thing to think about where you are in the alphabet, because it does follow you throughout your whole
Absolutely.
career,
So
basically.
much so that I actually feel a little offended at Stanford's Business School, and you might know her given that you're in marketing.
Acker.
Jennifer Acker is AA.
No.
And so it is one of the very first times in my life where I have not been first. And so I adore
That is
Jennifer,
funny.
and her work is phenomenal. It is funny
Look
that
at America's thinking fast.
Yeah,
I
exactly.
didn't even hear the question before you came up with the answer.
No doubt. This is awesome. Very, very cool.
Yeah. Yes.
But this idea of communication and the way Americus put it out there with CEOs seriously having to be on the spot to answer really quickly. What are your big takeaways, your big ahas on that?
Absolutely. So first and foremost, this is a skill that needs to be worked on. Many people feel I'm either born with it or I'm not, and that's not true. It is a skill you can learn and you can develop it. I always use the analogy of athletes. If you think about it, athletes in whatever their sport is, they are being spontaneous. They are responding to what's demanded in the moment, but they do a lot of drills in practice. So we have to practice for this. That's number one. When it comes to doing that work, we have to take a two-pronged approach. It's about mindset and messaging. And with mindset, there are a lot of things we have to do. We have to get present. We have to listen deeply. We have to remember that these situations are actually opportunities, not threats and challenges. So mindset is really important. And you have colleagues, I have colleagues that study mindset that really share how important the way you approach life, but particularly communication matters. But also how we craft our messages. Messages need structure. Structure is a logical connection of ideas. And if you train yourself on some of these structures, they actually give you roadmaps to help. We all know structure. If you've ever seen a television ad, you've seen the structure: problem, solution, benefit. Issue, challenge in the world, the product or service helps remedy it, and we benefit. If you can get the right mindset, develop the right structures, it becomes much easier to manage in the moment.
Let me pick apart a little bit of what you said, because and let's start with the first part before we get to the structure. One of the things that struck me that you said, and it sounds like kind of obvious, but it's not my experience that people do this, which is you said you got to do active listening. I find in a lot of these conversations, especially with people who really know their stuff, they're real experts, that they're not really listening. They're waiting. They're waiting until you're done so they can say what comes next. And one of the best advice I ever got for teaching, really, and when you're a young teacher or you're in there, like, you're so anxious to prove yourself, that I think this idea of active listening, I mean, right there, in my opinion, I don't know if you agree with me on this, but that's like an incredibly important piece of advice that I don't think people necessarily hear.
100%. Listening, as somebody who teaches communication, people are often surprised that I spend a lot of time talking about listening. Most of us see communication as putting information out, broadcasting, but listening is critical, especially in spontaneous situations, because if you don't listen astutely, you might miss what's really being asked if it's Q&A, what's really needed if it's feedback. I have a situation where in my life, I screwed it up. I came out of a meeting with a colleague. The meeting did not go well, and the colleague turned to me and said, "Hey, what do you think? What do you think? How'd we do?" I immediately heard feedback. What I missed was that he came out of the room, the back door. He was speaking quietly, looking down. He did not want feedback. He wanted support. And when I itemized all the things we did wrong, I damaged the relationship. And you're exactly right. Active listening is important, but more so than active listening, we actually have to repeat back what we've heard. I teach people and train people, and my wife gets really upset when I teach listening skills because she thinks I'm a fraud. She thinks I need to do some work on this. But
wow.
Yeah,
So, you're being quite
to,
transparent, sir. It's we love it here.
Well,
we love honesty.
Authenticity and being candid are critical. I teach people when I teach listening skills to listen to paraphrase. Most of us listen just for the top line of what we hear. And then we begin rehearsing, planning, and judging. You need to listen for the bottom line. So I'm listening. If I had to summarize everything you're saying, what would I say? That causes me to listen more deeply and completely. And then what we know from some of our colleagues who teach at Harvard, just a little bit away from you all, that if you actually parrot back, if you do that paraphrasing, not only do you demonstrate listening, but you actually begin to foster trust and connection. So listening is critical. Not only does it make sure you respond appropriately, but it makes sure that you will connect to the person.
I love the notion of a shared reality, and shared reality. I'll say it again. And we miss that a lot. We'll be talking to each other and it'll be landing on each other totally differently, and we'll have no idea. So I love this point, Barbara, and please jump in and continue what you were going to build on. That it's just trying to get to a shared reality in that understanding of listening, active listening, like Barbara said, as opposed to waiting for the silence to end. I love that point.
I mean, the other thing about this, thinking just in the way Americus set it up, we are a marketing podcast. So thinking about how these skills are useful for marketers, and in particular, as he set it up in crisis situations where communication is critical. Another advantage of what you just said not only are you really listening and forcing yourself to listen, but it gives you time. Like, I don't know how
Yeah.
important you think
Yeah.
that is, but like you know, if when you're talking about speaking fast, I forget what
Think fast, talk smart.
you
Yeah.
All right. Let's Barbara, let's practice together. Think fast, talk smart.
There you go.
But, like, I mean, that almost
Yeah.
implies I should think really fast, but, like, what you just said is if you actively listen and then take the time to repeat what you just said, you're actually giving yourself time. It's not like a race, you know?
Yes.
So two things I want to highlight based on what you said. First, think fast and think faster is all about pattern recognition. If you train yourself to recognize the patterns, you can respond better. So you actually become faster. Expertise is often defined as pattern recognition. When you look at a chess master, and a lot of the expertise research is done on people who play chess, it's really pattern recognition. So think faster is all about pattern recognition, not literally about thinking faster, because that can cause you to stumble. But you're also right. In situations of spontaneous communication, you can take some time. There's three ways I coach and teach people to do this. One, ask for it. Say, let me think about that for a second. That's okay. In fact, there's some research that says when you deliberately pause to reflect, people see you as more credible because you're really trying to be present and give them what they need.
Thoughtful.
Second, you can ask a clarifying question. If you ask me a question, ask me to do something, I can ask for some clarity. That buys me some time. And then finally, what we talked about earlier is paraphrasing. Paraphrasing is a lower order cognitive skill, which means we can do it and be thinking of other things. So it buys us some time. So you're absolutely right. We have to buy time if we want to. And we can do so by asking for it, by asking questions, or paraphrasing.
I love this point. Something else that jumped into my mind, Barbara, as we were having this discussion with Matt, and that's the idea of like how fundamental this is, right? Anytime a human and another human is engaging, Matt's work becomes relevant, right? So you can think about a million different marketing contexts where this might play out, right? Barbara is the retail guru at the Wharton School. She knows everything
I'm a
about retail.
wizard and a
Everything.
guru.
She's a wizard. She's a
I
guru.
love it. That's great.
It's unbelievable. I just love
According to
basking in her
Americus.
glory,
Yeah.
basking in her intellectual glory. Matt, so the idea of like customers, like how do you talk to customers? We talked about C-suite stuff, all of that stuff. But I want to put you in the hot seat, Matt, real quick,
Okay,
because I want to go back
I'm ready.
to this. All right, so you are the Disney executives, and you're starting to get some feedback from reactions to this situation with what Jimmy Kimmel said on the television show. And there's licenses issues, blah, blah, blah. You're counseling Disney in the early days. Take us through the analysis. What do you tell them? What pieces of additional advice, above and beyond what you've talked about thus far, would you give them, and how would you help them not destroy things or keep things, kind of under control, if that's possible?
Well, first, thank you for giving me a situation that isn't inflammatory and have lots of challenges on all sides. I appreciate that.
Don't say the wrong thing.
Yeah. So my advice in all of these types of crisis situations is first, understand the situation. Often people react quickly, and that actually can work against them. I'm not saying be slow. I'm saying take a moment to really understand what's at issue. First and foremost, in all strategic communication, you need to understand the audience and audiences you're speaking to. So what are the issues at play here? You have to lay them out in a dispassionate way to understand what's going on. Once you have that understanding, begin to think about what are the potential solutions that we can deploy here. They pulled the plug very quickly. Okay. What then do we do with that situation? Now that we've made that rash or quick decision, what is it that we're going to do? So really think through the opportunities and the problem solutions that you have, and think then about the ramifications of action or no action. So if I were advising Disney, I would first say, who are the constituents at play here? What are the issues involved? What are the possible solutions that you have? Look at that solution set. Think about the ramifications, and then begin thinking about the scenarios and how they would plan out. So do some scenario planning. Think about the reactions. This takes a little bit of time, but it is time well spent. When you move very quickly, you then have to not only fix the mess that got you to that place in the first place, but you often create another mess because you move so quickly. So I really think people need to just step back, take time, think about who the audience is.
let me double down on something you said earlier about that. I hear what you're saying, and it's kind of like the structure that you're going to use to respond. Another thing
Yes.
I heard you say in the beginning, which I think is right, especially in these kind of inflammatory situations, is that you kind of have to train on these frameworks so
Uh-huh.
that you can pull them up right away. I mean,
Yes.
that's one of the things that we do in teaching core marketing is we try to give a framework for immediately how to analyze. You know, we call it
Mhm.
5 C's, STP, 4 P's, and we practice over and over. The answer to each situation is different.
Right.
And then you need to think, you need to listen, do all those things. But
Mhm.
there's some value in setting up these structures. I think that that's what you said at the beginning, and I just
Yeah.
want to like double down on that.
Absolutely. So having structures that you are familiar with, well-practiced structures, help you because they give you a place to go. You can make the choice to go there or not, but at least you have a direction. So when I teach people Q&A skills, Q&A is spontaneous speaking. I have a structure I like to teach people. I'm happy to share it with you in a moment. But by virtue of having that structure, you can fulfill one of the two obligations of spontaneous speaking: what to say and how to say it. The structure tells you how to say it. It's like a recipe. I am a lousy cook. Neither of you would ever like to eat a meal I make, but I am a better cook when I follow a recipe. So I teach people a structure. It's 3 simple steps: ADD, for adding value. Answer the question, give a detailed example, describe the relevance or value of the answer. So if you don't mind, let's play this out. Imagine
Yeah.
you are
Play
interviewing
that on
me.
Americus, though.
Barbara
No. I'm
always
not going
wants
to
to
put it.
trip
I'm
me
going to
up.
have you put me in the hot seat. So I want both of you to imagine that you are on faculty to hire somebody to teach strategic communication at your prestigious business school, whichever. It doesn't matter. What is a reasonable interview question you would ask that doesn't just have a yes/no answer to see if I'm qualified to teach MBA students strategic
Oh, that's a great
communication? Just
question.
ask me a question, and I'll try to answer it in the structure. Be kind.
That's good. And so to make sure I'm going to ask another clarifying question to buy a little more
To
time.
buy some time. I love what you're doing, and you're going to paraphrase.
You see what
as
I
you
did
go.
there, Matt? Did you see?
I did. I did.
Yeah, but so we're interviewing someone. They're going to come in and they're going to start immediately, Barbara, teaching our Wharton MBAs. So I'm probably going to ask something to the effect of, what is your philosophy on how the things that we study as an academic show up in the ways we need to teach in the classroom? I
That's
might ask a
interesting.
question like that.
I believe it is absolutely critical when teaching strategic communication skills to role model and demonstrate effective communication. In all of my teaching, everything from how my syllabus is put together, through what I do in office hours, to how the students matriculate and what I say as they're leaving class, is all well thought out to demonstrate and role model what it is we teach in the class. So if you were to hire me, I would make sure that our students not just learn the theory and practice, but they see it play out so they can take advantage of and understand what it looks like. So you can tell me if that's a good answer or not, but
That's
it
a great
certainly
answer.
followed the structure. It answered the question, gave a detailed example, and then it explained why that's important or what comes next.
See, I need your help, Matt, because Barbara gets very high, student ratings. I'm just trying to get better. This is great advice, though. This is fantastic advice.
But you can see how having that structure, I didn't know what question you were going to ask. That was a question I was totally not knowing. I did not know it was coming, but I knew how I was going to answer it. I was going to give an answer, give an example, explain the relevance. So because I had that path, it was easier for me to put that answer together. And that's what structure does. And back to what you said, Barbara, if you practice structure, not just in messaging, but in your approach to dealing with issues and challenges, you can more easily and readily do it. That's just like an athlete who does all these drills. When in the game, the opportunity to deploy what they did the drill for comes up, they're at an advantage.
Yeah, it's kind of like, you're talking about thinking fast. It reminds me of the Kahneman framework, System 1, System 2.
That's exactly
And
right.
what you're talking about, System 1, is automatic thinking. And if you have these frameworks and rehearse it, even though the answers are going to change in each time, you have something you can immediately go to, and you know you're going to try to answer the question. You're going to try to give an example, and then you're going to try to say why it's relevant. I think I was looking at some of the things that you have said in the media before, just, to see which
Yeah.
questions you were asked that I was particularly interested in. And
Yeah.
one of them you were asked was, like, how do you overcome anxiety? Like, that's an interesting thing because a lot of people are anxious about public speaking, or they're afraid
Yeah. Many
in
of
an
our
interview
students.
or something like
Yeah.
this.
Mhm.
And I think that I'm guessing one of the answers to that question is going to be to have these frameworks to rely on. I don't know. Is that an answer to your question?
So having frameworks helps take away some of the pressure. I spend a lot of my time helping people feel more confident and less anxious around speaking. It is a ubiquitous fear. Those of us who study it believe it is just part of being human. We see it in every culture, and we see it start to develop at certain times in children's development as they become teenagers. So it's critical to work on. And there are things you can do to manage the anxiety. Up to 85% of people report feeling nervous in high stakes communication situations. Personally, I think the other 15% are lying. You can create a situation.
Yeah.
But there are many things you can do, from managing symptoms, the experiences we have, the shakiness in our voice and our bodies, the sweatiness on our brow. There are things we can do to manage that. Deep belly breathing is a great way to reduce some of that. We have to deal with some of the sources as well. One of the sources of anxiety is wanting to communicate right, to do it right. I have been doing this work for decades. There is no right way to communicate. There are better ways and worse ways, but here's where that structure piece comes in. Many of us believe that if I memorize what I'm going to say, then I'm going to do it right. So the problem there is when you memorize, you actually split your cognitive bandwidth, your precious limited cognitive bandwidth. So part of it is judging and evaluating, am I saying it right? And only part of it is in the process of actually doing the communication. It's much like when you have a laptop open and you have lots of windows open, each one of those is a little slower. Yeah, so this is where structure helps, because if I don't memorize, what do I have to get through my material? I have a structure. So structure is the answer to avoiding that perfection memorization trap.
It's a really quick story, Barbara.
Yeah.
When I did a TEDx talk many years ago, and the organizers were really all over me about send the script, send the thing, because they want to put it in the
Yeah.
confidence monitor. And the day of the practice, Barbara, it was a total disaster because I just don't operate like in reading stuff and things like that. So to your point, Matt, I said forget it. The next day, I kind of showed up and I said, here are my bullet points. Put the bullet points up. Let me work through this. Give me the timer and I'll fit into the timer. It made me realize the question, Barbara. I want to ask this. Are there heterogeneity differences in people who, yes, we can practice, but are there certain types of personalities where this person is just, maybe they're born to be an improv comic. I mean, they're just good with this stuff or how to talk. And by the way, I will share with you, Matt, Barbara has also completed a comedy course. So she is a master of improv comedy in addition to her wizardry and
I
retail
took the
guru-ness.
course. Master is a leap.
But what are you?
Improv, I think, is one of the best skills to train people to be effective in the moment communicators. Most people think improv is about being funny. It's not. It's about being present. It's about
And
being
open.
open to opportunity. Yeah, exactly. And we have lots of, I don't know if Wharton does, but here at the GSB, we have lots of classes that infuse improvisation, because a manager, a leader needs to have those skills. That said, Barbara, I want you to invite me to an open mic night when you're performing, and Americus and I will come and be in your audience.
Improv was hard. I like stand up better, actually.
Okay,
But
well,
improv,
you
let's
still have
take
in
improv.
stand up, you have to respond to hecklers and what's happening in the room. So there's a lot of spontaneity. I have a cousin who is actually a very well known comic, and it's wonderful to see him work a room. There's a lot of spontaneity in that, and all of us as leaders, as people, need to have those skills.
I want to kind of switch gears. You're saying so many things, and it's so interesting. No, it's wonderful. I love it, and so relevant both to communications and to marketing. But one of the things we're also interested in, just because we do this too, is not only are you at Stanford teaching and writing books, but you do have a very successful podcast.
Yes.
So I'm curious, were you like a
Yes.
pioneer in the podcast world?
Yes.
How did you get to grow your podcast?
Yes, share some of that wisdom with us, Matt.
So, as with many things in my life, it's about serendipity and willingness to take risk. So, 5.5 years ago, almost 6 years ago, the business school came to me and said, "Hey, we're interested in trying a podcast." The Stanford has never had the business school had never had a true podcast. They had classes that they would slice and dice and call podcasts, but those were courses that were made into podcasts. And I, like Americus, I had done a talk. The talk had done really well. It was about communication. So they said, "We know that there's an audience for communication. So do you mind?" And I've learned in my career that when opportunity comes, sure, say yes, why not? I'm very driven to help people with their communication skills. This seemed like a reasonable way to try. Well, this is where circumstance really played out. And I tell all my students, I tell my children, you can be really good at what you do, but luck plays a big role in life. We came out with our first episodes end of January 2020. So here we are with
Whoa.
six
Really
episodes
ahead of the curve.
on communication,
Wow.
and then the world shuts down. The pandemic
Wow.
happens. Everybody is
Timing.
sequestered. Everybody starts listening to podcasts. And people are like, how the heck do I communicate in this sequestered world? So here we were with content at a trusted source that was relevant while people had time to listen. So I think we had good content, but I certainly am under no delusions that we were in the right place at the right time. And thankfully, the audience started there, and because hopefully of the value we provide, the audience has grown. But just like in marketing, if you have an offering that people need, then you can build a base.
But you've been doing this now for 6 years. And do you do an interview show also? Do you talk to
Yes.
people?
Yes,
So
yes.
I'm just curious, over the 6 years, starting from pre-COVID, what are the natures of the guests you get on? And like, what
Yeah.
are some of the topics you've talked
So
about?
we have academics. I've had several of your colleagues on, Katie Milkman, Jonah Berger.
Ah,
We recently talked to Wendy De La Rosa. So a lot of Wharton faculty, clearly a lot of Stanford faculty, but also practitioners, expert practitioners who have something to say around communication. The nice thing about what I teach, similar to what you teach, I mean, marketing and communication, those are big umbrellas. A lot of things fit under those umbrellas. So we bring people on. Part of the key, I think, to our success is we're very brief. Our episodes are 20 minutes long. Our goal is at the end of every episode, you leave with at least 2 or 3 things you can implement right away. We've won lots of fancy awards. The one I'm most proud of is Best Dog Walking Podcast because we're 20 minutes. People walk their dogs for 20 minutes. They get value. So yeah, I mean, as marketing professionals, you understand you have to have a good product. It has to fit into people's lives. People have to see value from it. And that's what we've tried to build. And we are very responsive to our audience. We believe in the agile development, rapid prototyping. We try lots of things. Some work, some don't, but we're always in service of our audience.
well, Matt, in thinking of keeping it short, we are at the end of our time. So
Sure.
we'd like to thank you so much for joining us today and tell our listeners where they can go to hear about your work, your podcast, etc.
Well, first, thank you so much. It was a true pleasure. I love talking to people who are in the same world I am, both podcasting and academics. To find out more about what I do and what I'm up to, go to fastersmarter.io. And you can always link in with me at Matt Abrahams on LinkedIn. Those are 2 great resources. Happy to connect and happy to share and continue the education that you all are providing to your audience.
And you gave him a good way to remember your last name, right? Right at the
Yes,
beginning.
exactly. There you go.
Excellent. Love it.
Anyway, thank you very much. That's all we have time for today. Thank you all for listening. We'd like to thank our producers, Dion Simpkins and Marissa Renna. We'll be back next week. Till then, this has been Marketing Matters on the Wharton Podcast Network. I'm Barbara Kahn, here with Americus Reed.